Sorry about that. Welcome back to the channel. Glad you could make it. I'm going to be talking about Louisiana. Apparently they like to be called the Pelican State. Louisiana is pretty famous in the United States for a few things, and let's get into it. So, Louisiana was named after King Louis the 14th of France, and statehood was achieved for Louisiana April 30th, 1812. It's the 18th state to join the Union. The capital is Baton Rouge. And I said that really weird. I must be channeling my European ancestry. Anyway, Baton Rouge is how we usually say it. For those who are unfamiliar with the French, that means red stick. Yeah. Population 4.6 million, making the 25th most populous state. It has an area of 52,000, and I usually take out the 0.13 part of that. So anyway, 52,069 miles squared, roughly 135,382 kilometers squared, making it the 31st largest state. Largest cities in Louisiana are New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Shreveport, and Lafayette. Sorry about that. So, in 1528, the Spanish came to the area. Panfilo de Narvaez is a Spanish explorer. I probably butchered that completely. Discovered the mouth of the Mississippi River. And then in 1542, Hernando de Soto continued the Spanish exploration of the area. The French then kind of claimed the area in 1682. Robert Cavalier de la Salle named the region after King Louis XIV of France to honor the king. The first permanent settlement was Fort Maurepas. It's now called Ocean Springs, and it's in Mississippi. So, yeah. Sorry. Itchy nose. So, which is now near Biloxi. But that was the first in that area. And then we have, that was founded in 1969 by Pierre Lemoyne d'Iberville. He was a French military officer from Canada. So then the rest of Louisiana, west of the Mississippi, there's also the Isle of New Orleans. That became a property of the Spanish under the Treaty of Fontainebleau in 1762. The British then took control in 1763. It's kind of weird. So the Spanish took over in 1762. It was considered theirs, but the French lost the 7 Years' War, and so the British claimed the area a year later in 1763. So I think it may have been that part of the territory that would become Louisiana still belonged to the French, and some belonged to the Spanish. Yeah. So then Napoleon comes along, and in 1800 he reacquired the territory from Spain, but they kept it a secret. So it wasn't until 1802 that everybody knew that it was now under the French control again. Well, then Spain and France were trying to get control of the area, and then the United States purchased Louisiana in what's called the Louisiana Purchase for about $15 million US at the time. The French were still recovering from the war, and they needed the money. So, yeah. The Louisiana Purchase was seen. It's often called Jefferson's Folly. There was a huge amount of controversy. Apparently, Jefferson authorized $10 million to purchase it, but the final amount was $15 million, and so there was a lot of controversy around could they actually pay for the territory that they bought, even though it wasn't the right amount, and there's a bunch of stuff. The other thing is that, like I said, it doubled the size of the United States at that time, but it was still seen as Jefferson's Folly because they're like, there's nothing there. Well, there is a lot of stuff there, which is really weird that they're like, there's nothing there, because there would be natural resources and farmland and all this other stuff. But yeah. So the territory of Orleans was organized in 1804, and then statehood was granted 8 years later. Louisiana was, interestingly enough, part of the South, part of the Confederacy, obviously, but while they had 47% of their population was enslaved in 1860, they then succeeded in 1861. They were defeated in 1862. So Louisiana was not in the war for very long. The Union was able to control the Mississippi River, and they were able to use that to split the Confederacy. So they were able to basically overtake the state, and it really stayed out of the war after that. The other thing is that apparently there was a large population who were pro-Union sympathizers in the state. Yeah. After the Civil War, the freed slaves, it's interesting. Freed slaves started actually trying to get involved in government and politics and all this other stuff that they had not been able to do before. And they actually had 2 black governors shortly after the Civil War. The 14th Amendment provided suffrage for free blacks and everything. The military was able to enforce this. The problem was that the military didn't stay down in the South for long enough. Because as soon as the military withdrew, the white supremacists came in, retook power in the government. The blacks were then repressed. There was the Jim Crow laws and all that stuff. So by 1900, there were only 730 black voters out of 652,000 black people that were in the state. So thousands of people, thousands of these black people were leaving the state. So until the 1960s, the Civil Rights era, not only were these blacks leaving the state, but there were also disenfranchised whites. It's kind of interesting that we have this problem. It's like, well, if you're not the right sort of white guy, that's something that we don't often talk about, is the fact that, yes, there was black repression after the Civil War. But a lot of times what we don't talk about is the fact that the politicians and things at that point in time, they also had an agenda against the people that were white who weren't their sort of white. So even if you were white, that was no guarantee that you were not going to be discriminated against in the southern states. You could totally be discriminated against as a white person if you weren't the right sort of white person. And usually that just meant you were poor. So, yeah. So a lot of people were just, the state was hemorrhaging people who were trying to go to other states who were more tolerant and had less of the disenfranchisement that was going on at this point in time. So there were a number of clashes between blacks and whites during the Civil War era that got heated and violent. And it wasn't until the 1970s that the changes in the political makeup of the state were able to even things out, and blacks were starting to be able to take office again and things like that. So they have made strides since the end of the Civil War. Now, there is a lot of problems with the geography of Louisiana. Louisiana is divided into basically into two geographical areas. We have the North Uplands and the Southern Alluvial Plain. The alluvial region is a lot of swamps. It's coastal marshlands, beaches, and there's some barrier islands. It covers about 12,350 square miles, which is 32,000 roughly kilometers squared. And this lies along the Gulf of Mexico and at the mouth of the Mississippi River. And the Mississippi River traverses the state from north to south, for 600 miles, which is 970 kilometers. And basically it empties into the Gulf of Mexico, which is right there where Louisiana is. And so there's a lot of the swampland and things. And if you know about Hurricane Katrina, which hit Louisiana really, really hard several years back, they had a heck of a time dealing with flooding and things. And they always have to do that because technically, if I remember right, they're slightly below sea level. So it's kind of like the problems that Venice has, although Venice's problems are a little bit even worse because a lot of Venice is like built up on nothing. So yeah, you get up into the northern part of the state, and there's hills, and the rest of the state is up there, and it's prairies and woodlands and hills and stuff. And so it's a little bit more stable up in the northern part of the state just because we don't have all the swamps and stuff that down at the bottom of the state. It's a humid subtropical climate, long hot summers with high humidity, short winters that are not very bad. They're pretty mild. It's because of where it's situated right there on the Gulf of Mexico. So it's fairly low as far as its latitude goes, and the fact that it's a fairly flat as far as its topography goes, and then obviously the Gulf of Mexico. Rain frequently throughout the year. April to September is kind of the wet time of the month, wet time of the year, and there's a slight drop off in the precipitation in August. In the summer, they have a lot of thunderstorms, and the heat is what does it. Basically, there's a lot of the precipitation and stuff, and so they get, I shouldn't say precipitation, I should say evaporation. So that causes there to be all that humidity in the air, which then becomes clouds and rains back down. So in the winter, the rainfall it's less intense, so it still has rain. It's just not as bad as in between April and September. It's the second wettest state. Only Hawaii gets more precipitation than Louisiana. So Louisiana gets 56.9 inches or 145 centimeters of rain per year. Summers, let's see, June through September, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius or higher. Overnight, excuse me, overnight it drops down into the 70s, which is 21 Celsius. This creates, because of the humidity and because of the heat and all that other stuff, you get a lot of tropical cyclones apparently in Louisiana. They also have they're very vulnerable to hurricanes, particularly the lowlands, which is the bottom portion of the state. There's major water damage a lot of times from the hurricanes and the frequent thunderstorms. They average over 60 days of thunderstorms a year. And that's more than any other state except Florida. Apparently Florida gets more thunderstorms. So Louisiana averages 27 tornadoes annually, and the whole state is vulnerable because it's relatively flat. Tornadoes are more common during January to March in the southern part of the state, and then in the northern part of the state, February to March is where you have the more more of the hurricane warnings that you might get there in the state. As far as industry goes, agriculture, oil and natural gas, medical technology, film, and tourism. The principal agricultural products of the state are seafood. It is the biggest producer of crawfish, which is kind of like a small lobster. They supply approximately 90% of the world's crawfish. So, cotton, soybeans, cattle, sugarcane, poultry, eggs, dairy products, rice. are a lot of what comes out of the agriculture. Chemical products, petroleum, coal come from Louisiana. The state has actually started promoting quite heavily the film industry. So it has picked up the nickname Hollywood South. And within the United States, only Alaska rivals Louisiana in popularity for reality television. Yeah, there's a lot of reality television coming out of Louisiana, apparently. And then, obviously, the Mardi Gras celebration. It may not be the biggest in the world, but it's one of the biggest draws that brings people to Louisiana as far as the tourism industry goes. So, Louisiana is home to the New Orleans Pelicans, which is an NBA team, and the New Orleans Saints, which is the NFL team. So the Pelicans is a basketball team. The Saints is a football team. And then we have the Mardi Gras celebration in New Orleans. It's the largest in the United States, and it attracts more than a million tourists per year. Okay, then we have the French Quarter. So, as I said before, Louisiana being, originally part of France, or I shouldn't say part of France, it was originally claimed by the French. Anyway, the French Quarter, that's in New Orleans, that's where a lot of the tourists go to. It was established in the early 1700s, and it's the oldest neighborhood in the city. The most famous is Bourbon Street. So many people have heard of Bourbon Street. It has best Creole and Cajun restaurants in the district. I looked up some places. Café du Monde is one of those. Jackson Square, the French Market, the St. Louis Cathedral are all there. Tour operators will give you swamp tours. So if you want to go and look at the gators and crocodiles and whatever else, there you go. Honey Island Swamp tour. You have wildlife encounters and whatever else. Fan boat tours. If you've seen pictures of boats, they have these out in Louisiana. They're flat bottom boats, and they have these giant fans in the back of the boat. That's a fan boat. But yeah, you'll be able to go do tours, and you've got alligators, turtles, snakes, birds. There's so much to see out in the swamp. It's quite interesting. So they also have preserved plantations, so you can see what life on the plantation was like. Laura Plantation is one of those that you can visit that's still operating. Laura Plantation, Vermilionville, Melrose Plantation, Rosedown Plantation and Gardens. There's those. The top 5, there are 5 national parks in Louisiana. Jean Lafitte National Historic Park is one of those. There's also, it's part of the Mississippi River Delta, and it derives its name from a pirate, Jean Lafitte. Yeah, so trail maps, all that other stuff you can get from the headquarters. Guided nature walks, there's plants and sightseeing and all that other stuff going on there. If you're interested in music, New Orleans is the home of jazz. So if you've heard of jazz music and you want to get into it, that's where it came from, New Orleans. The French Quarter Preservation Hall is one of the most historic places for jazz. So yeah, Louisiana has more alligators than any other state. Again, my favorite part. Tabasco hot sauce. If you like Tabasco and you're thinking, where does that come from? There we go, Louisiana. The first indoor movie theater opened in Louisiana. Lake Pontchartrain Causeway. It spans 23 miles. It's at its longest point. It takes about 25 minutes to drive across it. It is the longest bridge over water in the world. Yeah. Interesting. Louisiana is the only state that is divided into parishes, not counties. Now we have other states that use other designations, most of the states use counties, but Louisiana uses parishes to designate the divisions within the state. New Orleans is considered to be the most haunted city in America, and Louisiana is the murder capital of the United States. Not really a good one. The turducken was invented in Louisiana. If you're wondering what on earth is a turducken, it is a chicken stuffed into a duck, stuffed into a turkey. So it's called a turducken. The laws of Louisiana are based on the Napoleonic Code established by Napoleon Bonaparte. The only place in the United States that has laws that are based on the French. Yeah. Poker was invented in New Orleans in the 1700s. You cannot feed garbage to your pigs without first cooking it. Yeah. It is illegal to steal another person's alligator. I wonder why they even have that law. Is it that common that we're like, look, you can't go around stealing other people's alligators. That's just no. No reptiles are allowed within 200 yards of the Mardi Gras parade. So if you thought you were going to bring your snake to the next Mardi Gras parade, no. Think again. Nicolas Cage, his tomb is in a cemetery in New Orleans. It's this pyramid-shaped tomb here, I think. I was looking for a picture of it. I think this is it. No promises here. Yeah, if you bite someone with your natural teeth, it's considered simple assault in Louisiana. However, it's considered aggravated assault if you bite someone with your false teeth. Apparently, that's because they're a weapon? I don't know. It makes no sense. Whether it's aggravated assault or not should be irrelevant to whether you're using your own teeth or somebody else's teeth. I shouldn't say somebody else's teeth. Whether you're using your own natural teeth or a set of dentures. It's still in my mind aggravated assault either way. Because you have to be pretty mad to just haul off and bite someone. Anyway, that's it for Louisiana for this time around anyway. Hopefully you enjoyed the trip through Louisiana. If you have questions, please leave them down below. I will do my best to respond. If you've been to Louisiana and you think I missed something, please let me know. Again, comments down below. Like, subscribe, turn the bell icon on so you get notified when I release new videos, and see you next time.